And we're back with the developers of Medusa. That would be Tyler Sprowl and Alexis Boyle, but they're not all of the developers of Medusa. So let us know who's not here today, and I'll get out of the way.
The other two developers are Dalila Jarvis and Joy Tartaglia, who are both in other parts of the country. And since we're all four of us are scattered throughout various parts of the U.S., it decided that it'd just be us two for this one.
Oh, well, since they're not here to speak for themselves, can the two of you kind of talk a little bit about what each of your roles were on the project?
Yeah, sure. I was not main programmer, I was the only programmer. I was the programmer. Joy was the environmental artist, while Dalila was the character artist, and Alexis was sort of a general overall game designer.
I guess can you actually
sums it up.
let's talk a little bit about the game and just describe what it is for the audience out there.
Yeah, so Medusa is a top-down 2D role-playing game that's essentially the classic tale of Medusa with a bit of a twist. You start off playing as the hero Perseus, in the tale that almost all of us have heard through some form of our our Greek mythology phase we had as kids. Perseus going to slay Medusa, but after killing her, you go back in time and play through Medusa's story through her own eyes, which adds a bit of another dimension to the game.
Yeah, actually, I thought that was interesting because the version of the Medusa story that I'm familiar with was a different one where the Medusa is one of the three Gorgon sisters, and she's just, I think, just born that way as a, I don't know, monster, I guess. So I didn't see it coming.
That's interesting. I actually knew the backstory for this one. So as soon as I was going to the temple, I was like, no, leave me alone. Leave me alone.
But so I'm curious, what about Greek mythology drew you to this theme and the story?
So I'm going to take the lead on that one there. So we kind of did it in the reverse order where we came up with the theme that we wanted to address, which in this case was more about feminism and sexual assault and kind of the effects that rape culture has on portraying women's stories. So then we were brainstorming and then we came across the tale of Medusa and we were looking into the story and realized that a lot of the time she was portrayed as like this temptress and she seduced Poseidon. And then in other tales, specifically Metamorphoses, we found that she was actually assaulted by Poseidon, but yet she was still cursed. So we kind of took that and ran with it.
Yeah, I feel like that's a kind of a running theme in Greek mythology is that you're sort of at the whim of the gods, and things just happen, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So I thought it was a really great, pairing of theme and setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the first things that I noticed is that the animations were actually really great. I'm sad that the animator is not here right now, but like, man, I hated Perseus so much. But all of Medusa's movements were so endearing, and I felt really bad for her. I can tell that you guys put a lot into this. I was actually curious how long you were all working on it together.
Technically, this was because it was a double major MQP. We sort of have been working on it since A term, so since the beginning of the school year. Mm-hmm. We also, because this was involved with psychology, we had to do some initial research first. But yeah, we've been working on it probably just up about until the deadline is in for Showfest.
Totally fair. I've squeezed games out in that amount of time as well. It's like I need it for just this festival. I got this. I was curious about the intended audience as well, because when I started the game, I didn't have the context, that it would start having real life tie-ins. And not that it did throw me off a little. And I do think it's a powerful message, but I was curious about like, who are you making the game for, right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's a great question. Whenever we were initially designing the game, we were thinking more about the audience of just the stereotypical RPG gamer, where it's pretty typical within RPG games, as I'm sure you both know, to go through and just kind of slay monsters to get the quest done without really considering what you're doing. So that was the audience we were initially trying to impact and kind of show that there's always this dual side to those actions.
It's a very sad ending. Like, I know it's a sad ending in the myth as well, I was curious about, the deliberate choice to show the parallel of real life events, but not change or even give some kind of, I don't know. I guess normally I would have expected an empowering ending, like maybe Medusa can take back the narrative, but you didn't give me that. I'm curious about that choice.
That's more so just because in real life it's often not a happy ending.
Yeah.
Very rarely do assault survivors get that kind of closure. So we didn't, because of the way that we had structured the entire narrative, that's just how we wanted it to play out. So that it resulted in the lack of closure to parallel the lack of closure in real life.
So given that, what would you hope that players take away from the game?
So our main takeaway we want players to take, said the same thing twice, that's fine. So the main point is just that this is something that is really impacting society, and it's been impacting society for so long, and it's kind of been swept under the rug and not really addressed. We kind of choose to look the other way because it's a sensitive topic and it makes us feel bad. But looking away whenever something makes you feel bad doesn't help anything. You have to actually think about it and address it and contemplate all of these things in order to make the change. So taking those feelings that we leave the player with at the very end and having them consider what they can do and how this is actually going on in real life is kind of the message we want to send.
I definitely felt angry afterwards. I was like, oh my God, and this is just out here. It really is like this.
Given how serious the themes were, was it tough for you all to work on this and have to think about it kind of all the time?
And sort of like immersing yourself in it, it does get a bit rough at times.
Yeah.
I just really see that all through all these like firsthand accounts with the literature that we had to research, and then willfully inflicting like this kind of trauma onto a character as well wasn't always fun.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, what's next for the game and for the two of you?
So for our game, we're hoping to release it out on itch to let other people experience the tale of Medusa that we're portraying. And for the two of us, I specifically am getting my master's at WPI in IMGD, focusing in serious games to hopefully continue this kind of work to make gaming actually impact society. And I will let Tyler speak for his future.
Yeah, no, at the moment I'm still sort of shopping around, for lack of a better term, for jobs. Definitely spend a bit more of the summer. There are some things in the game that I want to polish up from a gameplay perspective. AI that's a bit rough. Some underlying systems that could use some polishing. But other than that, it's just sort of the world is my oyster at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't worry about that too much. I certainly graduated without anything lined up and took, I don't know, maybe 5 months to find my first gig in the industry. So, these things take time, and it's all you're at the whim of the gods. It's kind of out of your hands. You just got to roll with it.
Wow, way to tie it in.
Yeah. The best way to end it, tie it all together.
Full circle.
And speaking of gods, here I am, the voice. Hi, everybody. I'd like to thank you all. This is a really interesting project, and being able to talk about it with the four of you was really interesting. Thanks, Sam and Chris. I can't wait to have you back on, maybe next year. At this point, we're going to take a brief intermission, shuffle chairs around, and be back with yet more projects and yet more devs.